Story 1. I think you need a reason to have a child. I simply have never had the desire to do that. Being child-free by default makes more sense to me than having children by default. Story 2. This probably sounds bad, but I never liked babies and little kids. Why would I have something I don't like? Plus, the actual giving birth part scares me. Story 3. As the eldest sibling in my family, I've already lived out my maternal dreams. Mental and chronic illness runs in my family, and I can't risk passing it along. I don't want to put my body through pregnancy. It's a lot of responsibility, and I would rather live for myself and all the other things I'd rather do in the world. Story 4. Why is having children the default and correct way to live your life? Instead of asking, why don't you want children? Ask yourself, why did you choose to have children? Story 5. To be honest, I am tired of justifying my decision not to have kids every week. People just cannot accept the fact that there are individuals who do not want to have kids. It does not matter what argument I use. They always come up with a counterargument that makes more sense to them but not to me. Just let me live in peace. Story 6. Starting when I was about 7, my mother and grandmother both often told me that having a child would ruin my life. I could never figure out when it would be a good time to ruin my life. So now I have no direct heirs for my fortune. Story 7. I've always felt content without children. I love my freedom, peace, and the ability to focus on my own interests. Plus, the thought of the responsibility and financial commitment is overwhelming. I've never had that parental instinct, so I'm just living life on my terms. Story 8. Kids are noisy, messy, destructive, and expensive as well. Plus, I don't have the patience for them. Don't get me wrong. I like kids in small doses. I have nieces and love the little twerps to death. But I'm very glad that I can come over for a visit, spend a few hours with them, and when they get tired and whiny, I can go home. That life isn't for me. Story 9. They are expensive, messy, loud, annoying, and gross. You have to spend about 20 years training them to hopefully become a functioning human. When you have a child, your life is no longer your life. It is their life. Every time you have to make plans or any sort of decision, you have to do it with the child being your primary concern. Of course, there are parents that do not do that, and shame on those parents for doing that to a child that did not ask to be made in the first place. You cannot be a selfish person if you have a child. It just does not work. Frankly, I could not fathom wanting children and am grateful my partner seems to like them even less. Story 10. I just plain don't like kids. I don't think they're cute. I don't enjoy the experience of being around them even when they're not my problem. I can't think of any way my life wouldn't be worse with a child. Story 11. 1. I do not want to pass on mental illness, genetic autoimmune diseases, and an insanely high cancer risk. I do not want to raise a child while dealing with chronic health issues. It would be unfair to them, and if they become sick, I would have to care for them while barely being able to take care of myself. I cannot guarantee I can give them the best care. I have simply never wanted to have children. Despite everything mentioned above, ever since I was a child, I have felt no maternal instincts and have never wanted a child of my own. I would prefer to be an aunt to my siblings' children. Story 12. My body barely keeps itself alive. I have no faith that I could grow a human in me without it killing me. I also would not want to pass on my illnesses even if having a child was successful. Story 13. Aside from financial responsibility, this world just doesn't care about children. Society actively endangers them. Why would I want to bring someone into this awful world? Story 14. In this economy? Pass. Plus, I can't imagine, giving up and dedicating a huge part of myself to another person knowing how I'm messed up in some ways. Story 15. Shouldn't I need a reason to have them rather than a reason not to? This question seems ill-guided. I look at my sister and her husband raising my nephew, and, while they seem happy most of the time, I simply think, that looks like misery. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy my nephew, but he can be exhausting, and not having the option to just say, nope, I'm done, and walk away would drive me into depression. Story 16. I am kind of messed up, would not want to pass that on to the next generation. Bringing a kid into the world we currently live in seems very mean. I am only 23 though, so by the time this is an option, the world would probably be even worse. Story 17. I think it is inherently inhumane to look at the reality of our current world and bring other people here to deal with multiple crises without any hint of a solution in the air. Endless war and genocide, climate crisis, precipice of treatment-resistant bacteria issues, microplastics, housing crisis, education crisis, artificial intelligence takeover, healthcare system collapse. 500 per 100,000 people in America are locked up. Just to name a few. None of these things are going to get better anytime soon. Even if a child lucks out into a first-world life with no major health problems, forcing more people to witness all of this isn't really humane either. I know people will call me a pessimist, but I enjoy my life as best I can. I don't sit around and read the news all day and cry. I'm involved in my community. I have a job I like, hobbies I love, but I am unwilling to bring life into this situation unless I see some positive collective movement toward responsibility for the world or people. It's just not fair. It feels like we are enduring low-level, lifelong, systematic psychological torture in the name of profit and imperialism. I don't want to do that to another life until there is some change. Story 18, here are my reasons. I think children born today are going to have a harder life than I did. And that's despite the fact that we would pour hundreds of thousands of dollars into making sure that they got a good childhood and the best chances to succeed in a world that is in decline, between the weakening economic prospects in the West and the impending climate catastrophe. On a personal level, the financial aspect cannot be overstated. The cost of raising a child is so high that we'd both have to forego our individual dreams to be able to raise a kid. Limited travel, limited flexibility, limited time to do what we like. Then there's the chance of birth defects. My cousin's son is majorly autistic. She had to change her entire career to take care of him, and he'll never be able to take care of himself. My other cousin is just raising 3 little girls who are complete troublemakers. Life is already enough of a struggle without being wholly responsible for another human being. There's the risk that I'd be a bad parent, like so many people are. I don't want that responsibility. I hate loud, annoying things. I get one life, I'd rather it be mine. Story 19. This is probably one of my favorite questions to answer. In fear of going on a tangent, I'll list my reasons, most of which people have already said. They are a financial burden regardless of your financial state. They require so much money. My time is too precious to me to use it up on another being. I come from a large family and have already raised children. The want for kids is actually a selfish want. Not that it is a bad thing, but unfortunately, people don't see it as a lifelong responsibility until it's too late. The unfortunate what if of the child being born healthy. The unfortunate health implications of actually birthing a child. The potential for a fallout in the relationship with your partner and then having to deal with kids being involved. Being emotionally available at almost all times. Expectations that are subconsciously formed and not being met. The current economy and state of the world is not one I would want to bring an innocent being into. These are basically the major points, but within each point, there are more reasons. Excuse the messy writing. I haven't slept in 30 hours. Story 20. I've never felt the biological imperative to do so. I look at kids, and while I think they're great, it's never hit me that I need to have one in order to fulfill my purpose. I like my life how it is, just worrying about me and an eventual partner. Story 21. For as long as I can remember, I never wanted children. I have obsessive-compulsive disorder, and the physical part of it terrifies me. Besides that, I have not healed my trauma enough to support a child. I do not trust anyone enough to stay with me to raise them due to our patriarchal society. And the cost of living for one person alone is absurd. It just makes sense logically to not have any. I have been open to dating people with kids, but even then, it bothers me how quickly people with kids bring new partners into their lives. Story 22. I really dislike children, and everyone I know who has a kid seems absolutely miserable. Everything I like about my life would stop if I had a kid. Parents do not realize how much they complain about being parents. You all make it sound terrible, and as far as I can tell, most of you hate it and do not particularly like your children. Story 23. I don't want kids because I don't want kids. We don't ask people who do want them their reasons, or we shouldn't anyway, so that consideration should go both ways. Story 24. The current persisting state of the world. We are more technologically advanced and aware, but we are also treating each other worse and seemingly failing to evolve as a species collectively. Story 25. The trauma stops with me. Not every woman has this capability. Evolutionary adaptation is beyond reproduction now. It's not safe to bring more children into this world. We don't have enough to sustain. We don't have a predefined purpose. That was human constructed. More things, as per Maslow's hierarchy for self-actualization, demonstrate parenthood to not be beneficial. Things like creativity and career achievements are healthier and more satisfying. We don't need to make meaning in our life through reproducing something we assumed would be a perfect replica of us. Instead, we contribute to society for legacy in ways like volunteering, mentoring, behavioral health, and helping people. The fact people keep bringing more children into this world is actually why the world is being destroyed. Story 26. Too afraid of having a special needs child. Too afraid of being a single parent. Too afraid of being poor and unable to give them a good quality of life. Too afraid of not being a good parent. Too afraid of raising a complete jerk or criminal. Too afraid. Story 27. I don't think about myself when it comes to having children. I think about the world my children will grow up in. The chance of getting raped is so much higher nowadays, the economy is terrible, and technology is rotting us away. Maybe I just have depression, but I don't think I ever thought life is so wonderful. There are just too many cruel people out there, and I don't want my children to get hurt. At the same time, I know I can't shield them and be overprotective because it's suffocating. Also, I do enjoy money and free time and have no patience, though. Story 28. Many reasons in no particular order. The idea of being pregnant makes me feel sick. I like my life without that type of responsibility. I would not want to bring another human into this world. Story 29. The question I asked myself is this. If my child became a vegetable for 99 years, am I still willing to care for them and willing to sacrifice everything for them? Admittedly, it is an extreme scenario, but one that isn't completely unrealistic. My answer to that is no, so I've pretty much decided on not having kids. Story 30. I've yet to hear a reason to have kids that's not selfish. People want kids to make them happy and fulfilled, take care of them when they're older, and give them purpose in life. Not a lot of people seem to be taking responsibility for what it means to force someone into this world and life. It honestly seems like the most selfish act a human could do. A human you create could add immeasurable harm to the world or be harmed in huge traumatizing ways. So many parents are bitter and resentful when their gorgeous bundle of joy isn't doing their job to bring them enough joy. It's all messed up. Story 31. As a father of 4, I commend anyone who figures out they do not want kids and then follows through on that decision. Seriously, this is not an easy way to live, and now that I have been at it for over 20 years, I am running out of steam. No regrets, no rose-tinted glasses either. Story 32. I'm on the autism spectrum, and having a child would mean they would probably get it as well. Even if they don't, it would still be hard raising a child. I value my freedom too much. Story 33. I am perfectly happy with my life as it is, and do not see how adding the responsibility and costs of having a child would improve my life. Kids are cute, but so are potbelly pigs. I do not want either to live at my house for 18 years. Story 34. I have 2 reasons. It's unfair to the child to be brought into the world in its current state. Everything is a mess. What if the child were not normal with health problems or mental problems? I don't have the mental capacity to deal with that day by day. Story 35. I can't even afford a home, and we are having water cuts twice a week. There are no resources to raise a child. On the other hand, I haven't found a partner with whom I can build a life, and I also have a bad temper, so I do not feel good when thinking about how I'm going to react when I have to correct them. Story 36. Money and my life would not really be mine anymore. They call us selfish, but it's okay to want whatever you want in life as long as you are not hurting anyone else. Story 37. My genetics are terrible and I would be a bad mom also due to genetics. I love my partner, but his family history isn't that great either, and he doesn't have the attention span to co-parent. Kids deserve parents who can give them time and attention, and we're selfish. And I love kids, especially the ability to give them back and say bye. Story 38. Childbirth seems way too traumatic and painful. I don't want to spend the rest of my life worrying over a child. I'm just not interested in raising a child. I want to enjoy my adulthood, not be stuck as a stressed-out mom. Story 39. The world is challenging, and I'm not mentally healthy enough to care for a child without having a complete breakdown in the process, causing issues for the child for the rest of his life, thus perpetuating the cycle. Also, children are loud, sticky, smelly, expensive, and time-consuming. Story 40. No thanks to added responsibilities. I don't want potential losers as kids and then have to worry about them marrying a loser. Not having them is a good reason to not have grandparents around often or imposing. Story 41. My thoughts on this evolved as I got older. The idea of having a child is so ingrained in most of us as something we have to do. From a young age, I was aware of how overly populated our planet was and thought about how having children as a species contributes to it. I thought it would have been better for people to adopt orphans. Then, as I grew up, I realized that I would be too emotional or worried as a parent and that I would get overwhelmed by so many aspects of parenthood. As I realized that maybe I am not able to physically have children, I dedicated my efforts to caring for others in my life, such as my patients and my family. I thought that maybe contributing to helping other people was why I was never meant to have kids.